So welcome to another one of our feature presentations. And today we are talking with a group of newly graduated midwives, CPMs, who've just taken the North American Registry of Midwives exam, the board exam. It's about 8 hours long, grueling, lots and lots of questions. And today we're going to talk to them and find out how they prepared, what worked for them, what didn't work, and what they have as advice for the future generation coming behind them, especially now as we are, most of us, in some form of stay-at-home order, which means that there are less resources and less places for folks to get information. So we're hoping to be that center, that guide. So let's start with intros. And I'm just going to call on you so it doesn't get noisy. Tell us where you are in the world and when you graduated, and maybe the one word that describes your experience of testing, if we can do that. So Monica, I'll call on you first, if that's okay.
Yeah, so I'm Monica, and I'm calling from Maryland. I think I passed in May of 2019. My one word for my testing was frustrating due to a horrible experience at the testing site I first attempted to test at, and they refused to allow me to test anyway. And so that I had attempted to back in March of 2019, and so then they finally allowed me to test in May. And so yeah, frustrating was my word.
So maybe home testing is actually a good change.
I would have loved that so much. I drove over an hour and a half to go take my exam, was refused entrance to take my exam, and drove back home after leaving my 3-month-old child with my husband in order to go do that. So,
oh, that's a terrible, terrible situation. God, I can't even imagine. Well, you're here now. Congratulations.
Yes.
Megan, let's go to you out there wandering with the babe.
I'm Megan. I'm from Texas. I finished and tested on February the 25th. So my one word would be arduous. My baby was 1 month old when I did that, this one. So
wow. Wow.
I like Monica, I tested about an hour and a half from home. So it was my first time to leave the baby. And, you know, all the little details like, oh, you should take a pump with you. And, you know, just, yeah, it was a lot. It was arduous. So I'm happy to have it behind me. But I think home testing would have been a dream, an absolute dream.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. I think it will change things for the better in a lot of ways. Well, thank you for being on the call, and thank you for, you know, everything. Congratulations. You made it, even with all the things. So
yes,
good job.
Thank you.
Brianne, let's go to you now.
Sure. I'm in Southern California. I tested in September of last year, actually on September 11th, which when I got that date, I was kind of nervous about it. I'm like, is there a bad omen with this date?
Wow.
And I would say anxiety describes my experience testing. Like, I have it anyway, but I think going to the test center added another layer. LA traffic is so unpredictable. It was on a big university campus, and so just like knowing what building and where I could and couldn't park, and having to go get the special parking permit, and it was only good for 8 hours, and I was like, oh my God, am I gonna get stuck if anything happens with the test, you know? So it was just unnecessary anxiety to add to my already high levels of anxiety that taking the test. So that was
So you're also voting for home testing. It's a good change.
Absolutely. And at home testing where you can bring your water in. That was another thing for me. I'm like, I can't have water.
Yeah. 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 Okay. Well, we won't pick apart the past system. We're just excited about the new system. We're going to talk about that. That's awesome. Abby, welcome to the call. Will you give us your intro?
Hey, yeah, my name's Abby, and I am a certified professional midwife in Missouri. I took the NARM exam last June of 2019, and I think the word that would describe my experience was just a monumental moment of of anxiety and excitement, knowing that it had taken so many years and so many hours to get to where I was, but also doubtful that I could even do it. Was I ready? And I actually had a great experience with my testing site. I had to drive also an hour and a half to the testing center, and they were really great. I really didn't have any issues, but again, that was last summer, so who knows.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're really glad you're here. Congratulations. I know you're already serving your community, and that's really exciting. Thanks for being on the call.
Thank you.
And then Maggie is with us. Maggie, give us your intro.
Hey, I'm Maggie. I am a CPM in Nashville, Tennessee, and I literally just took my test in March, and it was a real ordeal actually to take the test. So my testing site, apparently the prov thought that they were not testing at the particular place where I was signed up, so they canceled my test twice. And then I called the actual testing site and to see if they were open because of all this COVID stuff going on and spring break in the middle of that. And they said, yeah, we're still open. Nobody's told us we can't be yet. And so I would describe my one word as like lonely. Mm-hmm. I was literally the only person in the testing place. So it was like by myself with all the like noise machines, and it was really cold, and I just was like, okay, I'm here all by myself, but okay, I can do this, so.
That kind of is midwifery, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't that the general vibe? Like, okay, I'm here by myself with a lot of loud things around, but I'll just keep going on my path. Well, we're so glad you graduated. Congratulations. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom and experience. So we're just going to popcorn around, however you guys want to do this. I know everyone has a lot to share. The first question I want to ask you is, how did you prepare? And if at all, I want to really hold the less popular pathway, which is that there's no preparation at all. They just go in with the knowledge that they currently have. Some people do that, and that's a very valid pathway. Some people spend months cramming 5 hours a day, and then there's a whole lot of spectrum in between. And so I just want to say, how did you prepare for the NARM exam? And based on your recollection of how you prepared, what would you do differently now that you've taken it, if anything? And share that with our listenership who might be CPM students preparing to take the exam at some point in the future. Anyone have an answer? How did you prepare?
I didn't.
I guess.
I didn't. She said. Let's start with you. Who said that?
Megan.
Yeah. Tell us.
So, I worked full time and was very ill, pregnant, and had all of these great plans. And I bought the big package of highlighters, and I mentally had it all together, and I had the study guide and the flashcards, and I was going to do it, and I didn't. It just came down to it, and I had a baby. I got put on bed rest for too many back-to-back births. And then I had a baby, and then I never did. I didn't do any of the stuff I planned to do.
Yeah.
So, but in retrospect, it might have been a good idea.
Well, tell us why you feel that way. You passed, yeah?
I passed. There were, I don't want to skip around too much, but the antepartum part, some of the specifics, I felt ill prepared, and I kind of felt like a lot of it was not specifically applicable to the current atmosphere for midwifery in Texas. So it would have been good for me to have reread, like everyone says, reread Heart and Hands. And it's an unpopular opinion, but I do not like that book.
Yeah, no, it's not an unpopular opinion. I agree.
Okay. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
But I didn't, and I just didn't have it in me through through everything that was going on. And I did pass. I do think my stress level might have been lower. At least I could look back and say, oh, well, maybe it would have been, I don't know. There's always the what ifs. I did pass. I did make it. So, but yeah, no, other than, because I extended my preceptorship longer and just really had a ton of hands-on experience. So I wound up staying for 4 years just because I didn't feel mentally ready to sit the NARM. I didn't feel ready to be, a full-blown, full-fledged midwife.
Yeah, which is a whole other conversation, which I hope we do get into a little bit at the end of the call about what NARM actually prepares you for. But but thank you for that truth and honesty telling. Abby, did you study?
So the way I studied for the exam, I was obviously really nervous and anxious going into studying because I had a sister who was having a baby, and I was with her pretty much the whole time right before I went into my test. So I was taking care of her, and I had minimal time to study. But I basically just crammed at the last bit, 2 weeks right before the test, as best as I could. I did the PEP route, the PEP path for midwifery, and so I would go on to all the helpful midwifery groups on Facebook and ask everyone's opinion. And it was basically like a trust fall. All of these awesome midwives would comment and say, okay, do this, do that. But the number one thing I really appreciated was everyone said, the majority of the midwives said, it will be your preceptorship and your experience that you've had these years before you arrive to the exam. And looking back, it could not be more real. So the experiences that the student midwives are going through right now are some of the most vital preparedness things they can do. But Andrea Chamberlain's guide was very helpful for me. I just took that and I read through it probably 5 times, highlighted it. I would go grab Varney's and Williams Obstetrics and or Heart and Hands and just read through that, pick through that, going through that study guide. So that was helpful for me. I said on the front.
What's the name of it again?
The Andrea Chamberlain study guide.
Okay, we'll link it in the show notes. That's great. Thanks for that tip.
Yeah.
And what would you do differently now that you're on the other side? You're like a year on the other side. What would you do differently?
What would I do differently? I would trust the fact that my experience and my preceptorship, internship, being a student midwife was basically the biggest study guide for the exam. I would go off of that and just your gut, the first response you feel when you read that question, just go off of that.
That's great advice. Thank you for that. Brilliant. Monica, you were sort of raising your hand in the beginning. Tell us, how did you prepare, if at all, and what would you do differently?
So I was kind of in a similar situation with Megan. I was pregnant. I finished my apprenticeship in October, and I was away from home. I had just moved in with my husband, and so we were still in the process of moving, and then I had my baby in December. I sent my paperwork into NARM, I think, right before or after Thanksgiving. I wasn't approved until sometime in January. So it took a little while, and I don't think I actually started studying until January. But then I had a newborn, so a lot of it was one-handed or trying to rock and nurse and do all those things. Once I had attempted to take my exam that first time, I didn't study again after that just because of the stress, and I was so frustrated. But what I did, because I tend to, for me, it was a confidence issue. It was, I have no idea what this test is like. Nobody can talk about it. You have all these people saying you should take the Mercy in Action prep course. You should try the Go Midwife prep course just for the different questions. But they're so vastly different from each other from what I've heard that how is that even helpful? So I ended up taking the CIB, and I went through every single topic, and if I didn't feel like I knew enough on that topic, I couldn't write enough about it, I grabbed, my Varney's Heart and Hands, the best book, and I don't even remember. Oh, and Holistic Midwifery. And I just went through and wrote about each topic. I think learning styles are hugely important. So for me, I had like Andrea Chamberlain's study guide, and it didn't help me personally because reading it didn't transfer to actual retained knowledge. I had to write it down or hear it like being read to me. And so I just went through and I basically made my own study guide, very much similar to Andrea's, but just my own, in my own words. And that way I was writing everything out. I didn't get to actually make it all the way through the CIB that way because of having a newborn. But in addition to that, I did end up doing Go Midwives test prep because of the price point. I couldn't afford Mercy in Actions. And I felt like that was helpful as far as testing questions for NARM. The way that they're worded was helpful. Just having to reread it and make sure that I actually read it correctly and didn't even going with that gut feeling, but also not jumping to conclusions before I finished the entire question. And those were the most helpful to me. For me, it was just my learning style and retaining.
And what would you do differently now that you're on the other side?
I would not have
a few months,
so
but okay.
I
Yeah.
would not have I would really have tried to not be as anxious as I was about the test, and to have had more confidence in myself and in my training. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Let's go to Maggie now. Maggie, will you tell us how did you prepare? It's so fresh in your mind, I know.
Oh yeah. Honestly, I prepped probably the last month. For the last 6 months of my training, I started to go through Andrea Chamberlain's study guide, which basically is she took the CIB and answered all the questions and wrote it out. And I was kind of like Monica in that I still needed to write things down in order to retain them. So I was going through every question and writing everything down. I think that helped me the most, but in agreement with what Abby said, I think my apprenticeship itself, and like she said, going with my gut with the questions is probably what helped me to pass. I also did Go Midwife because it was only like $30 for a month, which is affordable. And it's like you're not making much going to these births, and some people don't make anything. Some people have to pay people. And so I was just like, well, maybe this will work. And I'd taken standardized testing many times, but it's nice to get that sort of the way that they ask the questions and stuff. But honestly, Go Midwife, the only thing that helped me with that was the way they asked the questions. I felt like it was way too fundamental, or not fundamental, but more like definitions and things like that. Whereas I felt like NARM was more birth scenarios and prenatal scenarios and that kind of thing. So yeah. I think my apprenticeship and going through the CIB, or Andrea's study of the CIB, which by the way is I think it's like $40.
Okay.
I think that helped me the most.
Yeah, that's great. And would you do anything differently now that you're on the other side?
Honestly, I don't think I would. I mean, I could have made a better score. I didn't get 100 or anything like that, but
that's definitely not the goal.
Yeah, but no, I think I did the best I could with what I had in the moment. I wasn't pregnant or had a baby or anything like that, but we all have our life circumstances and things going on, and I was just done. And I think that there wasn't anything I could do anymore. Just like, here I am, I'm done studying, I'm done with all this. I want it to be behind me. I'm just gonna take the test and F it, just gotta do the best I can.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's very, very clear. Thank you. Thank you very much. And Brianne, tell us how did you prepare and what would you do differently?
I did the MIA, the online course. I also took the CIB and went through it myself and made flashcards. And I think more than even like using the flashcards, it was writing down the flashcards and really kind of looking for it, getting all the information, writing it down was more helpful to me. I didn't honestly think that the MIA course was very helpful. If I had it to do differently, I would have spent a lot more time with another midwife, my preceptor, someone going through scenarios. And like I did also training and you go in there and they give you your patient stats and they give you what's going on and they ask you what you want to do. And I think that type of format would have been really useful. I learned I had 2 different preceptors and I learned what they would do in each situation. So I knew a way of doing it, but they were so very different. And I think it would have been really beneficial to me to ask, why did you make this decision? Why didn't you make this decision? Just to hear the rationale behind it so I could kind of think through that. So I think just scenarios, more scenarios is what I would do differently.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So I have said before, and I think I'm not alone in saying this, that the NARM exam is a basic entry-level midwifery exam. Would you guys agree with that assessment?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we're doing way more beyond what NARM is. Like the testing or whatever.
The prepping, the studying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Megan? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, that's a tricky button.
Yeah.
No, I pretty much overall agree. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
What section of the NARM gave you the most pause, where you were like reading the questions and being like, wait, I don't know this, if any?
For me, it was the postpartum.
Okay.
In the breakup on the CIB where it gives kind of the percentage of how much you'll find of each section on the test, I think I was surprised by how much of postpartum was actually on my exam and some of the questions relating to that personally.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? No, the sections were all easy. This is what I'm hearing.
I'm sorry.
They're equally as difficult. I don't think there was a big difference. I think I felt
there wasn't
prepared.
a big. Okay.
No. There were like 2 questions that I was like, what? Where did that come from? And the rest of it, I felt like I knew this was going to be here.
Okay.
I think for me, I agree. You know, it was pretty much equal on mine. I felt like I had a whole lot of antepartum questions, but I think it's because I did 2 sections straight through. I didn't take a break in between the 2 parts.
Okay.
Which is not wise. But it felt like the antepartum part went forever. But really, as far as difficulty wise, I felt like they were all pretty equal.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Honestly, I had so much anxiety that throughout the whole test, I was having to like just basically talk myself off a ledge from walking out.
You know, you're really not alone in this. In my position of counseling and consulting with midwives and students all around the country, I get calls from students preparing for the NARM all the time, and sometimes actually just after they've taken the NARM. And this is a really common theme. The idea that the experience of test taking is really traumatic. And that the amount of self-care, self-talk, rescue remedy that's needed to get through the testing part is way more than the actual tests. And yes. I wonder, would you guys comment on that? Like, does that ring true for you? And what's up with that? Why do you think that's true?
I think it's because, well, for for me, I think it's because it's like, this was 5 years of my life on the line, plus paying all the money. It's like so expensive, you know? And it's just like, I can't fail this. Like, I don't want to go through this again. And just, I'm ready to start something. I think, you know, when when I finished my preceptorship or whatever, I just was like, okay, I am done. Like, I want to be on my own. I want to start something. I'm ready to wrap this up. And so it's just like everything is holding on that line of pass fail. And not that I wish that it wasn't that way, but for me, that's how it was.
And I agree with Maggie completely. So that was where we were at too. Plus the leave the baby in the hotel with a bottle for the first time situation. So it's great.
I felt a lot of anxiety about disappointing people. Like, my family has dealt with this for years, you know, the midwife life, and they've dealt with me not being around. They've dealt with, for the past 3 weeks, I've pretty much been absent in their lives. And so I felt like it would, if I came home from that and didn't pass, I just felt like it was going to be such a disappointment, because then they'd know it's not over. Like, you're going to have to do this again. And also, my preceptor needed me. She really needed someone else licensed. And so I just felt like I had all of this stress that I can't disappoint everyone that supported me so much over the time.
Yeah, that is really real. And that kind of feeling is universal at the end of any completion of any kind of endeavor. You know, am I going to make it? And so many people depend on me. And that, I don't want to diminish or minimize that in any way. That's real. And that is heavy. That's a heavy weight to carry into anything. But what is specific about the NARM? I've heard a number of you echo that, like, the process of getting your testing approved or showing up and not letting them have you let you in, or like the actual process of testing was part of it. When I was back taking the NARM, there were only 2 testings a year, and there were only like 6 locations in the whole country. So many people had to drive or fly to take their test. And before your test, you had to have a secondary skills verification, which has mostly gone away now, where you had to go and have 4 hours with live models and a total stranger preceptor watching you do midwifery.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we still have second skill verification, but it doesn't have to be that long.
Yeah, it's just a few things. Yeah. Well, it's I think it's getting better. You know, waiting for half a year to take your exam with a group of other NARM people from around the country was less better than getting to schedule and test at least in your state or your region, which is now less better than getting to just get a date and test on your computer with the camera on. You know, I think it's getting better. But like, logistics aside, what about the NARM brings up so much anxiety? Silence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really hard for me to put into words what exactly it is. I think it is just the lack of preparedness. I mean, I don't know if anyone else could agree with that, but yeah, just the lack of going into it literally not knowing what you're about to be taking, or being questioned on exactly how the scenarios are going to be, etc. So yeah.
I think that perhaps it feels scary because everyone's journey is different, and they have different preceptors, and they take their academics different. And I think it's kind of scary to not really know someone who's done the exact same thing and they were able to pass. You know, I think it would be useful or helpful. It would have made me feel better if I'd known everyone else in my cohort that had the same exact experience, they passed. But not knowing, you don't know if you got it all, I guess, you know, because maybe other people.
I 100% agree with that. 100%. very much relate
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah, there's no clear tested way, right? Everyone's piecing together bits and different books and different workshops and different preceptors and different experiences and even different birth experiences, that there's no actual proven like checkbox where you can be like, okay, I'm done. Everyone feels like they're guessing.
Yeah.
Does that sum it up?
You can't know what you don't know.
But that also is true once you become a midwife too.
Yes.
You never know that you're totally prepared.
Yeah.
A few of my friends who have, which a lot of students are going the MEEC education route at this point in time, but my two recent friends who took the NARM within the past 2 months both went through a MEEC accredited school, and they felt very prepared. They didn't have the same sort of anxieties or concerns that I did. I went in feeling pretty confident, which that may have been different paths and experience and education and whatever, but that's what they reported to me.
I did a MEEC
Are any of you
school.
MEEC? Yeah, Megan, tell us.
Yeah.
What did you think?
Well, I actually did a lot of different things. I did non-MEEC, and then I transferred to MEEC, and then I tested out PEP. So I'm one course from finishing NCM's program, but like, I think it was Brianne who said my preceptor really needed me. That was the situation for me too, where it was like, okay, I need to get done, and I need to get done now.
Mm-hmm.
So but I don't know, I'm also a registered nurse. So for me,
You've tested before.
I've tested before, yes,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. So
Mm-hmm.
I dealt with a lot of overthinking as far as that goes, but I felt like the MEEC was helpful, but I still dealt with a lot of the same worries and anxieties that everybody else has mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a nurse as well, but I think going through nursing school, you take so many tests to prepare. Like,
Yes.
we took so many things to prepare, and I went the PEP route for this because it was the path that opened for me. Financially, it suited me. I had a young child starting out, and I only have one, but I had test anxiety when I was taking my nursing stuff, and test anxiety, for taking the NARM. And I think it's just, you want to do well, you want to be done, you want to start your path, and this is the only thing standing in the way.
Yeah. Well, we had some recommendations of resources. Are there any that haven't been mentioned that really feel like now in retrospect you wish you knew about this resource? So whatever it is.
We didn't mention Quizlet.
Okay.
And that is one I downloaded, and when I said I didn't prepare, I did read through Quizlet. They have a Heart and Hands and a Varney's study guide, and it's free.
Okay.
So they're not, I wouldn't say they're amazing, but they do, they give you an opportunity to go, oh, I haven't heard about that in years. I should look that up.
Yeah.
So
cool.
But other than that, I had heard of all the others.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Is high continuing education something that midwife students can take and go through? Because I don't know why I just found out about it as a midwife, but I have found some of those online courses really helpful just to go through, like on the fetal distress and gestational diabetes and things like that. So that's a resource I didn't know about as a student midwife.
Those
Cool.
are great. Mm-hmm.
We'll link it then as well. And ultimately, despite all these tools and techniques and things out there, you are responsible for getting the information in your head, being able to convert it into something that you can regurgitate at a moment's notice, right? Like that's still your job. And I heard many of you echoing in the beginning that your apprenticeship was the main source of that information, which really brings us to the reality that the preceptor that you work with is vitally important to your success. And I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads. Because the preceptor process in the CPM path is half or more of the process. I'd love to sort of shift gears a little bit and ask you all if you could give advice to a brand new student or a student who's needing to switch preceptors. What do you look for in a preceptor? How did you find your preceptor? What questions did you ask? Given that this is so important.
Yeah, I'll kind of, well, every preceptor has a different personality in the way they teach, and I had a handful of preceptors because I worked at a birth center, and so various different personalities. One of my primary appreciation that I have now, in the moment it was kind of frustrating and I felt like I was put on the spot sometimes, but one of my preceptors, she was amazing about just, she kind of threw me into the situation, but I knew she had my back, right? She would just say, so Abby, what would you do? Right in front of the client. And I would be like, oh my gosh, I don't know. I'm like being put on the spot. So she threw me into the situation. And then another preceptor, she wouldn't let me do as much until I verbalized my reasoning behind what I was doing. So she was a more cautious midwife. So I kind of had both ends of the spectrum of a midwife that would say, I'm right here for me, and then another preceptor who was more cautious and not allowing me to do as much until she felt like I was truly ready. So looking back on my experience, I was blessed to have both personalities and both trainers. But I would look for a preceptor that doesn't just allow you to catch a baby, because it's not about catching babies, right? It's about, we need to know if a mom has thyroid issues, why would a thyroid issue cause a bad pregnancy outcome, a possible bad pregnancy outcome? Why does gestational diabetes have such a negative effect on, possible shoulder dysocias? Like all the nitty gritty details of why things happen. So I probably would go for the more cautious preceptor approach, and not just a midwife preceptor who allows the student to do anything. I don't know. I appreciated that mostly.
Yeah, no, that's that's great advice, that actually you're looking for a teacher, not just the numbers.
High standards. Have a preceptor that has really high standards.
That's great.
I too, I think it's really important to make sure that your preceptor is actually a preceptor and not somebody that is looking for help or looking for that extra pair of hands. I mean, I think that's great, but if they're not willing to put the time in to teach you, then they're not actually being the preceptor, and you're just kind of often free labor or paying to be that labor. And not that that's not without experience. I mean, you learn a lot by just attending those births, but I was very, very blessed to have several different midwives over my different preceptorships, all of which took the time to talk through things before, during the birth and then after the birth. And, it wasn't just about me being there to set up and take heart tones or, clean up afterwards or whatever. And so I think that, being able to talk to prior students, asking, how do they teach? What does a prenatal look like? Do they take time to discuss things with you after, or to like debrief after a birth? What are expectations that they have of a student, and their time commitment in it as well. I've seen a lot of like solo midwife practices that really expect their students to drop everything the minute that they need them. And while that's great, when I was single and didn't have kids, I can't imagine trying to be that and be there for every single thing without a preceptor that understood, what was also
Yeah.
going on in my life. So, the time commitment that they expect from you is also a big deal depending upon where you are in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And getting that clear before resentments and frustrations come up is very, very important. Thanks for that.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think for me, I think it would have been better to have a variety of preceptors, just to see different styles. I'm really grateful for everything that I learned from my main preceptor. She was like so thorough and like MacGyver in every situation. But I feel like I could have learned a lot more from different people. I think also what Monica said, like asking questions before you just jump into a scenario because there's only like one preceptor in your area, is a big deal. I did not ask enough questions, and I think that it would have saved me some heartache. And what their teaching style is, because are you one that throws somebody in? Are you one that teaches as you go? Are you one that encourages?
Yeah.
I think it's really important to get encouragement along the way, because you feel so much like, I don't know, not confident, and somebody that's willing to build confidence, I think, is a big, would be a big plus. So
Yeah.
I wish I would have known that stuff before.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's really good feedback. And there's so much that we can unpack with apprenticing in the United States. But Megan, do you wanted to share something?
I did. I would suggest that everyone make sure that their preceptor is actually a NARM registered preceptor before you send in your paperwork.
That's a good baseline. Yeah, I like that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, despite what they tell you, even if they're absolutely the most wonderful midwife you've ever met, don't write all of your paperwork until you have verified that. Just don't. So, yeah.
Sounds like maybe a little personal experience. I'm just
it's been a really fun 4 years, Augustine. It's been amazing.
Well, and
some things we learn, right?
Yes.
Sorry. Sometimes, if they are NARM registered and their years lap, and they basically are no longer registered, but 2 days ago they thought they were, and then they might have forgotten. Starting out your preceptorship, make sure they know the exact date that their registration with NARM to be a preceptor runs out, because you can put it on your calendar to help remind your preceptor, hey, you are kind of not going to be a preceptor with NARM by this date, so you resend in your paperwork.
Yes.
Also, just from the administrative piece, because I can't help my brain do anything else, client care in their practice management back office as a way to set reminders for all your certifications and NRP and licensing and all that, so that the student does not take on that job.
Perfect.
That's out there. Well, I guess let's close tonight by I guess I'd like to ask each of you to sum up what you feel prepared, or let's even go back to like where Maggie is right now. Like, she just took her test, she just finished, she got her certification, congratulations. From that place, for each of you, what do you feel prepared to do? Or what did you feel prepared to do? What does that certification engender in you? What does it give you? If that's clear enough. And Maggie, since you're the newest graduate, let's start with you.
Oh gosh. I don't know. I guess it's a check off to say, hey, you can do this. Like you can start a midwifery business or join a group or whatever, but I don't necessarily feel 100% confident. I'm still working with another midwife, and kind of joining her practice just to still get experience. And, I wouldn't be prepared or feel confident to do a birth by myself. I don't feel like I had enough that my preceptor stood back enough and let me, she definitely let me run the scene and run the prenatals and run the postpartums, or however if you use the word run, but I still kind of felt like I could get on the naughty list, or maybe I wouldn't do everything right. And so I'm like, is this a reality? Can I do this by myself now? Is this too, I don't know. So it's like, legally, I'm still waiting for my Tennessee license to go through. So I can't legally catch a baby here yet by myself, but I've got all the paperwork through. But it's just like, okay, I've been given my green card, but can I go? Maybe. I don't know. I'm still a little trepidatious.
Yeah.
So,
Abby?
yeah, I'll go ahead. For me, and Maggie, I can relate to those things that you said, and I don't know, I appreciate the words that you shared there, because that's real raw emotion and feelings. But for me, when I look at the certificate and I think of passing the exam, I feel confidence, and I did initially too. I felt really confident and accomplished, but also at the same time scared to death. And like, oh my gosh, I've made it. This is the end of a chapter, but I have the rest of my life to keep learning. And I think the biggest encouragement that I would have to all new midwives passing your exam, or, even if you don't pass the first time, that's fine. Just always tell yourself you're never going to arrive knowing all the information. Always stay humble. Please always stay humble, because if you ever feel like you know it all and you have it all together, then you don't need to be practicing. I mean, there's a certain level of, yeah, I'm confident. I'm obviously doing this on my own, but maintain that fear, that holy fear, when you look at that certificate, and just feel the precious weight of responsibility you have. And honestly, at the end of the day, trust the process of birth. I mean, we're midwives, we trust it. And so we're all going to make mistakes every now and then, little or big mistakes, but the process of birth is pretty straightforward, and if something looks bad. You like, a red flag is pretty clear.
Thanks for that. That's really lovely. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Abby.
Anyone else want to share where they feel like they are when they graduated? What did it confer to you?
For me, I wanted it to give me that, like, that check off. Like, I think I was looking for a completion from it. But after I got past it, got the certificate and everything, it just, I don't know, it kind of just feels like a stepping stone more than anything. I mean, I feel as ready as I did before, which is, I mean, depends on the day, but I think that's with anything. I don't know. I was looking for validation in it, I think, as much as anything. Obviously I'm glad it's passed. I'm glad it's done and that it was successful, but it just, I don't know. I feel as prepared as I did before as I took it. So if that makes sense.
It does. The result isn't always what we anticipated that it would be, because ultimately you're still you with the knowledge still in your head, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what everybody has said, in that it was an accomplishment after so many years of working. It's nice to feel like you have something a little bit tangible, even if it's just a piece of paper on the wall. But that same fear of, like, you don't know everything. Then it does help to just show you, I don't know, it showed me my accomplishments. It showed me how long that I have worked on this, the knowledge that I do have. And I think that for me, the most important thing is, as everybody has said, knowing I don't know everything. I work by myself. We don't have very many midwives in our area. But I have, my birth assistants are advanced students just about to become midwives, that we're all going to be birth assistants for each other. So knowing that I have somebody else there that is also very skilled and is looking for the same things has been a huge help and a huge relief. And so, still being able to contact my preceptors. When something is going on, and, asking questions, because I have a relationship with them, and they're still, my one preceptor is still my mentor, is still somebody that I will contact if I'm, questioning something, or she's more than happy to be woken up in the middle of the night with something going on. And that kind of support, I appreciate that so much, and building that relationship with the midwife that I worked with.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, community is kind of where it's at, I think. Yeah. Well, my friends, it's been really lovely to connect with you. Brianne, we didn't hear from you recently. Do you have anything you want to share in regards to who you are now, or what it meant to you? Or
it felt administrative. Like, I know all this, let me get it on paper, let me get the signatures in the right place. It felt like I had just kind of wrapped up my present, and now it's done. And then I felt like I could relax into being a midwife. Not trying to be a midwife, not trying to get a signature, let me relax and be. And I was so much less stressed at births after the license, and I hadn't changed. I was still the same exact person, but I just felt like I deserved to be there and to make decisions, and I had earned that respect. And so in a way I felt much more relaxed after that.
Yeah, I see that too. Well, thank you everyone for your clarity, for your honesty, for your vulnerability tonight. We're going to link all of the study ideas in the show notes. And this will be on the YouTube channel for you guys to share with anyone you know that could use some encouragement, some words of advice. I want to go on record and saying publicly that I love to be a resource for anyone that is struggling, feels alone, doesn't know next steps, feels excluded from their community, or bullied by a preceptor, overwhelmed by the process. I love to be a resource. I'm wondering, are any of you willing to be a resource to folks in that situation?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
That's basically 100% of the response I get when I talk to midwives. So sorry to put you on the spot, but I knew you all wanted to be helpful and wanted to be in community. And so I just want to show again in a really public and unscripted way that the culture of midwifery in the United States is changing. And we are moving towards collegial working environments where we all support each other. And the territorial old paradigm of scarcity is melting away. So this group of folks on our call today are ready to be resources for anyone. And I know there are many, many more out there. So keep building those communities, keep supporting each other, and congratulations to each of you for passing the NARM and starting midwifery. Love you all. Thank you again.
Bye.
Okay.
Love you too.
Bye.